Welcome back, you filthy exiles. So we finally have another progress update for this build, and yeah, it's getting pretty wild. So I've dropped Maven with it, should be able to do pretty much everything in standard endgame now. It's not at Uber stage yet. It will need a Mage Blood to be able to take Ubers down. It's just not that type of build. Delve depth wise, we're at about 470, pushing past to about 500. It'll probably reach 600 without Mage Blood. Now, a couple of things I did change in the build. So, number one, I have a brass dome now. Now, the reason why is basically the way that the Ascendancy works for Unbreakable with the change. 15% of armor applies to chaos damage taken from hits. So, I had a look at this based on, I guess, whether or not you do it with a brass dome or with a fourth vow now. And just league on league, the changes between fourth vow and brass dome make brass dome a more favorable item, but it depends on what you want it for. So physical hit is 62,000 right now. And we have 93,000 for like our elemental hit, right, and chaos hit. So we're fully capped on chaos as well, I'll add. If we switch to fourth bow, it'll drop our damage, it drops our effective hit pool, but our overall fire, cold, and whatnot goes up, but our physical max hit goes down. So in those depths and delve where you really need it, you're going to get clipped with fourth vow. It makes no difference in T16 mapping and T17 mapping or whatever. Like at the end of the day, you're going to hit like a truck, right? And you can take a fair bit of damage. It's not like a weak build by any measure. But Brass Dome just offers you, and you get more life regeneration with fourth vow, but Brass Dome just offers a bit more bang for buck. Now, you could switch it around and change fourth vow and then basically change out the Ascendancy, wherever that is here. Yep. So, like, the effective hit pool is not going to go up by enough that justifies it. And this was something that I was playing with, and why I think Brass Dome is actually like the new fourth vow, more or less. The other thing that Brass Dome gives you is crit immunity. So you can't take any extra damage from crit strikes, which is where I was dying when I was using the fourth vow. And the other thing is overcap reses. Arguably, if you can get a double corrupted brass dome, and funnily enough, I'll have a short up soon where I actually 6-link 2 of these in one sitting. But they're an affordable chest piece, crazy amount of armor you get off them. With the double, it goes up to, it was at 9.4 thousand armor just from the chest. So, like, you can also craft armor that goes up to 5,000 if you want, but brass dome is probably going to be easier and cheaper to acquire. I'll leave it up to you. But that being said, that's basically the biggest change in the build aside from the obvious, which is I now have a second cluster in the setup, which isn't optimized at any point, right? Just using Battle Harden and Ironbreaker. This is what I had sitting around. And ideally, I'd want to get some attribute points into this. And then we're running Forbidden Flesh and Flame with Blitz. Now, I'll do a video later showing you how I quickly got like 15 div to be able to afford this. And I assume after this video, they will go up in price depending on the demand. But yeah, no, I got mine for like, one was 9 div, the other was like 6 div. And all I basically did was just use the exchange market and whatever I'd farmed. And yeah, so now we have blitz charge stacking in the build. You get 20 blitz charges. This gives you a huge amount of attack speed. And then on top of that, I've switched out the dual setup to crit strikes in my 6-link. So I've removed pulverize, wherever that is. I think I bricked it. And yeah, so the AoE is still pretty good. Like for mapping, you're just going to hit like a truck. It will get to around about 76% crit from what I can see here. I think I've got to change it. Yeah, we get about 76.05% crit, and there's room to improve that further. And I actually have a secondary tree, which I'll give you, which is spec'd up further beyond this point. Now, I've deliberately undertuned the DPS, and the reason for that is because I can't sustain frenzy charges consistently now, because I had to basically move the points of the tree down here. I do have a phantom point here and a phantom point here, and that's because if I take that away, my attributes go turkey. And if I take that away, I have just made a mistake in the tree, and you can literally put that in anywhere you want. Otherwise, just chuck it into this health node here, and it'll just give you a little bit more HP or survivability, or you could put it down into some Impale, and that'll give you some more DPS. But overall, like, yeah, the biggest change in the tree is we did lose the ability to sustain our on-hit frenzy charge stacking, so I'm going to have to come up with a better solution. I also removed the savagery node here because it was now pointless, and I also removed the extra endurance charges up here because that was pointless as well. So I have made a few changes in the tree, but we'll talk that through shortly. And yeah, outside of that, like everything else is pretty much the same. I fixed up all my flasks now too, but we'll talk about that in gearing, and the helm and whatnot as well is slightly different. But yeah, let's get into the video. Okay, so for gear, helm, basically it's got reduced mana cost in the implicit. This is just running the Searing Exarch implicit, so the embers that drop in T16 maps or roundabouts from altars, Exarch altars. And then basically I'm still running my replica Dreamfeather. People have asked me how I get the melee hits have 4 to 5% chance. That's a corrupt, and just search for the corrupt in literally in Path of Building. Not in Path of PoE Trade on the website. So just type in implicit and it'll be corrupted implicit, and that's what'll pop up. I don't know what the price of that is, but I think it's went up. Emperor's Vigilance, I do have a +2 to socketed aura gems, and I have all my auras in there. This gives me a bit more defense and everything else in between. I don't know how much this costs at the moment. Yeah, they don't exist. So, but any Emperor's Vigilance with a high roll on armor and energy shield is going to do you justice. I'm still using Atziri's Foible, but now I have Inexorable crafted onto the Anoint, and the reason why I have that is this is basically the same effect as Unflinching. So Unflinching gives you a chance to get endurance charges when you get hit. It's 30% chance, but Inexorable, it gives you a 25% chance when you get hit. It's basically exactly the same thing. I don't see that. The only difference you get is +1 endurance charge, and it's not enough elemental damage negation versus what this provides with Divine Flesh that would justify me in taking Unflinching, which is why I'm going Brass Dome is the better of the two pieces of armor moving forwards, and that's what the numbers show me. It's also how the build feels as well. So talking about that, Brass Dome, so I got a +5 to all maximum elemental resistances. So my ele resistances sit at 82, 86, 81, and 80% for Chaos Rest. So I'm totally overcapped in every way now. Not perfectly, and I have 65 max block because I use Versatile Combatant, which reduces my damage by about 35%. That's how Glancing Blows works. It's not perfect block, but it definitely reduces a ton of inbound damage. And then rings haven't really changed. I now have non-channeling skills have negative mana on them. So I managed to get that from just playing Syndicate and having that roll on some gear. Tanuahi, they're corrupted with an implicit attack speed roll, and also my boots, which have brittle, most important roll. These are the boots I have been using the entire time, and I definitely need to upgrade them, but I need the intelligence because my character's a bit of a dum-dum. Anyway, that's it for gearing. Oh, and sorry, also, so Flask, Granite, I've got shock avoidance, and we'll talk about why I have shock avoidance on it very shortly. And I also have crit strike chance on my Amethyst Flask now. Taste of Hate, which is a big damage reduction item that I have. I've also got Basalt with attack damage leech as well. The reason for that is we can no longer get attack speed rolls on Flask, which suck. And then a Diamond Flask as well, which gives me increased armor. And the reason why I've done these offset is because if you try and get a Basalt or Granite Flask with armor roll on it, they are incredibly expensive, and I don't need to do that. But eventually what I do want to add is a Bottled Faith, and we'd eventually switch this out for a Progenesis once we can afford a Progenesis, which would make this build extremely tanky. And that's why we basically need to go down to like 600 to 1000 depth at that point. So we've got to farm up a lot more currency to be able to do that. But yeah, anyway, the build is tracking quite well. Smashes all the endgame now. So yeah. Anyway, let's get into the gem setups. Okay, so gem setups. Precision in the helm with Arrogance, Frost Shield, and War Banner. I don't use Frost Shield a great deal, but it is just nice to have it there, and you pop it when you're standing still. It does reduce a bit of inbound damage. Now, in the shield, I have Determination, Flesh and Stone, and Blood and Sand. In the sword, I have Assassin's Mark, Mark on Hit, and Arctic Armor. I did change out Herald of Purity. Arctic Armor is just going to give you a lot more survivability and damage reduction. It's a little tip from Bone Shatter. So this uses some elements of Bone Shatter to get around taking damage. In the chest, I've got Shield Crush, Impale, it's level 21, Brutality, Multi-Strike, Increased Crit, and Melee Fizz. You'll notice I don't have Awakened Gems in it yet. I prioritize getting my Blitz Jewels over my Awakened Gems because now the Awakened Gems are easy as pie to get. So there's still tons of damage increase that can be garnered into this build. And then basically Molten Shell, open socket. So once we get our Pride All's Uprising, then we'll add in a red socket into here and we'll be able to run Pride. And then we have cast when damage taken and enfeeble. This is another Bone Shatter tip. So basically enfeeble procs when enemies hit and triggers the cast when damage taken. And this is really good for being in Delve, taking some big hits. This is going to give enemies 15% reduced accuracy, 23% less damage, and 14% less damage to unique enemies. Now, this does overlap with Assassin's Mark, which is problematic because we can only have one curse on our build. But for the most, this is going to trigger on ads when you're running through Delve, and this is going to trigger on bosses or unique enemies and whatnot, and rare enemies. So it's sort of a trade-off that you make between the two. Outside of that, you've got Blood Rage, faster attacks, leap slam, and automation on my boot setup, which is why I move really fast initially, and then once my blitz stacks stack up, I get really, really fast, and I can just go through everything. Anyway, that's it. And we don't have a Mage Blood or anything like that in the build. If you can get a good Stygian Vise, I'd recommend doing that. But yeah, anyway, let's get into the path of building. Okay, path of building. All right, so no changes to the Glorious Vanity, right? So yeah, we don't want to do anything with that. We want Divine Flesh. This build is a Divine Flesh build, and that's what's going to make Jugs relatively strong moving forwards. That or strength stacking. So I did take 1 point in Rage on hit. We can take this point off and put it anywhere in the tree, fortunately. So Rage on hit is really easy to garner on this because we hit really quickly. So we have 30 Rage in no time, and you'll notice it's an absolutely huge amount of damage we get out of it. Then we come down. We've got our cluster here we'll talk about very shortly. I did pull these points off of here, and I did put them into Leech. And Leech is surprisingly powerful now, and in fact 10% insta-leech. And the reason why is this keeps me in the battle for significantly longer. So if you're dying a little bit, this is actually really good. I think this character gets to 1500 leech now, and it has a portion of that as insta-leech. So it's really useful to have Leech in this build because it does so much damage and it leeches so much damage back. Then in here, armor. So with our armor mastery here, every 4 seconds we regenerate 1% of armor as life. And that's quite big because we have like nearly 188,000 armor in this build right now. So it's quite chunky on the armor side of things. And then basically everything's relatively the same down here until we get to this point here. You'll notice we now have Storm Shroud in the build. And that's why we have this built into this flask. So 54% chance to avoid being shocked. And eventually we're going to get boots with that. So I don't care so much about the armor roll on my boots. I really care about intelligence. And on top of that, shock resistance, essentially. And what this will mean is if I can get another 45% from somewhere else, I will be ailment immune. And so what we can see when I pop this, I now have immunity to ignite, chill, and shock at 54%. And that lasts for the duration of the flask, then goes away. And then I already had cannot be stunned and immunity to freeze. So basically that's everything but burning damage immunity. So beyond that point, we've got the inexorable anoint. We have the cannibalistic rite with the mana mastery up here now. We also have the shield mastery here. Nothing major. Seething Fury still in the build. And then our other cluster setup up here is Battle Hardened and Ironbreaker. So this needs a big improvement. And we have our Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame Jewels, which gives me Blitz. So basically, I am a Zerker on a Jug now. Now, Ascendancy changes. So basically, Undeniable, Unstoppable, and Untiring are all the same. And Unbreakable is the one that we've switched out. So we ditched Unflinching, and we're now running Unbreakable, which means 15% of the 188,000, which is a fair chunk of armor, is now being applied to Chaos damage, which is also with the resistance being applied to our elemental damage thanks to Divine Flesh. So we're doing a bit of multiple damage conversion wizardry here and trying to get the Jug to work basically the same that it used to work with the old Unbreakable setup. We're just abusing Divine Flesh to achieve that. So yeah, that's basically it. So it's pretty tanky. It's not like it's not the tankiest build out there. Like it's up there, right? But it's definitely not as tanky as like Zenith right now. Zenith is just crazy, and the price to play Zenith is insane. But that's a whole different, entirely different build and different play style. And if you want to farm for that, it's going to take you a little bit longer. This is a bit cheaper and easier to run, and a bit more budget, and gets you through the whole game without feeling like you're going to fall over when a wind just gusts over the top of you. But yeah, anyway, that's it for the tree. So this will all be in the description below as per normal, and I'll also put the secondary tree as well with some of the improvements and upgrades. We're eventually going to take it to that point, and I haven't really looked at tattoos yet. So we could actually throw armor up a fair bit because strength has no implicit benefits because of the brass dome. We can abuse the living crap out of tattoos. The only things that you won't be able to do that on will be like your hard knocks and your proficiency nodes and stuff like that. You don't want to get rid of any intelligence or dex in the build because it's starving for it. But yeah, any of these strength nodes, go wild with any tattoos you want to apply to them if you think that they're going to benefit you. If you can't get Fortify, by the way, with the sword, if it's too expensive, there is a tattoo that allows you to proc Fortify that you could use on stunning hits, which will work because Shield Crush is a hit that has the potential to stun as well. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. Okay, so just so we run through the config very quickly. So time spent stationary, yep, we have Lunaris and Tukahama. We have endurance charges. If we tick on power charges and frenzy charges, technically we have 11.2 mil if we're running through maps and taking down map bosses. But if you're fighting a boss, I've left it at 7.9 mil for the people who want to be like, that's fake, that's an inflated PoB. There you go, I've taken it out. You don't have to worry about writing that in the comments now. So we also have blitz charges. This is coming from our Forbidden Flesh and Flame Jewels. Onslaught, Fortified is coming from our sword. Onslaught and Adrenaline come from our Tanuahi. We get 30 rage from this teeny little point that's selected here with the rage on hit. And then basically, yes, we're leeching. We do have a flask active. Have you been hit recently? Generally, yes, with my characters, they generally are. Enemies in the vicinity. So we get increased physical damage reduction based on Soul Lunaris. Melee distance enemy, we're basically standing on top of enemies the whole time. And we have Brittle Ground, which is coming from our boots, which is here with drops Brittle. Brittle's like one of the best things you can run on pretty much any build. That's why like rare boots are better than crafted. And obviously this is Guardian and Pinnacle boss damage as well, ticked on the tree. I have seen some creators that have been putting it as standard boss. And yeah, you can do that, but see the effect of hit pool go up the way that it does? We can go to that, it goes down. That's why we have it on Guardian and Pinnacle boss. And for anyone who's putting it on no, you're just lying to yourself at that point. But anyway, that's basically it for the config tree. Okay, so hopefully you're enjoying this build if you're playing along with this series. I'm going to keep throttling this build, but we have another build ready to rumble, and I'm excited because I managed to get the rings. But we're going to call it the Thunder Fist build, and it's going to use Doriani's Fist. So for anyone who might have tuned in the stream, you might know what I'm going to do. But yeah, it's going to be really cool, and it's because you can get these negative lightning stacking rings now, thanks to the Mirrors of Kalandra being added back into the game. Anyway, that is going to be something we're going to start this week at some point in one of the nights for a bit of fun. Most likely on the Zerka. In fact, it will be on the Zerka. But anyway, we'll do that when we get to it. But yeah, if you like this video, don't forget to like and sub to the channel or check out the Twitch. And yeah, I'll see you guys probably on stream tomorrow night. Have a good one.